Hello and welcome back to First Down Fantasy. As always, I am Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And today we are doing our top 10 wide receiver rankings for the 2021 fantasy football season. If you are just joining us, make sure to check out our last couple of videos where we rank the top 10 through the top 20 quarterbacks. Actually, no, we ranked all the quarterbacks, top 1 through 32, and then we ranked our top 10 running backs as well. So this is the next ranking, obviously, with wide receiver. And if you are joining us for the first time, thank you. We really appreciate it. Always make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss any of our new content coming out, which we will be posting a lot more during the season. And without further ado, we're just going to get started and do our list. So for this episode, we're just going to be doing wide receivers 1 through 10, and then on Friday, we will be doing wide receivers 11 through 20. So with that being said, we are going to start off our list with our number 1 wide receiver that we have ranked, and that is Devonta Adams. Devonta Adams had an unbelievable season last year where he was averaging about 21.5 fantasy points per game, and I think the biggest stat to look at was that he had 18 touchdowns, which is almost unprecedented for a wide receiver to get in a full season. And with Devonta Adams, he's one of the top. I think he's one of the only 2 guys you would really want to take in the first round in your drafts. And you know what? If I have him in a keeper league, I'm super excited that he's there. He's a volume machine. He gets like 20 targets, it feels like a week, but playing with Aaron Rodgers certainly does not hurt anything.
No, he was dominant last year. Like, there's not much else to say. Like, I had him as my number 2. You had him as your number 1. I had Tyreek Hill above him. I think with both those guys, you just can't go wrong. They've been so steady year over year. They're always up there, and they're the elite of the elite. I think those 2 are in a clear tier of their own, and you're happy. There's not a whole lot that can go wrong outside of injury with those guys.
Yeah, and Devonta Adams is in one of the unique situations in the NFL where he doesn't really have any competition. It's Devonta Adams and nobody else.
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody else to really take targets away from him other than maybe like a Robert Tonyan and Randall Cobb and Valdez Scantling. But those names I brought up, they're not big names. So they're not going to take the targets away from him. He's still going to see his 10 to 15 targets a week, and he's going to have humongous catches, and he's always a threat in the red zone to score a touchdown. And that's what he did last year with Green Bay. He was pretty much a touchdown machine, felt like 2 a game, pretty much.
Yeah.
And when you have that playing with Aaron Rodgers that we know he's going to play now, that makes me way more comfortable to have Devonta Adams ranked in the top 2.
Yeah, that was one of the trends we both saw when we were making our list this year, is a lot of these good wide receivers have a really good wide receiver on their team too. So it's how do you rank guys who are so similar? You don't know who's going to be the top target. None of those problems exist with Devonta Adams. He's going to lead the team in targets by a wide margin, and he's going to be great doing it.
And with that said, now going to our number 2 wide receiver, which was already mentioned by Logan, the big Kansas City Chiefs fan, it is Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill he's a speed demon, and the only thing I can knock on Tyreek Hill is, even though he plays in arguably the best offense in the NFL, with the best quarterback in the NFL, with one of the best coaches in the NFL, it's Travis Kelce is being the top tight end pretty much in fantasy.
Yeah.
Like, he takes a lot away from Tyreek, but still, like, Tyreek has his opportunities, and I love Tyreek Hill as a top 2 option. He's easily there. I love him. He was still averaging like 19 fantasy points per game last season, had 15 touchdowns as well, so he was there. But it's how much is Travis Kelce going to take away targets from Tyreek? How much is that going to be? And if the offense gets up really big in games, does Tyreek even play as much snaps, which I'm assuming that's going to happen a lot this year with Kansas City.
Yeah, I think if you're in a full PPR, maybe it's not as clear-cut of a top 2 tier, because Tyreek, he isn't the volume monster that a lot of these guys are, but he is so good with what he gets. Like, looking yards per reception last year, number I've got in front of me is 14.7. Like, that's insane. Like, Devonta Adams is one of the best wide receivers in the league, and he had 12. Like, he takes what he gets, and he can hit a home run on any play. He's always making big plays happen, and he also, 135 targets is nothing to turn your nose up at. So, again, if you're full PPR, you might lose a little bit with him. I think Devonta Adams is more clear-cut number 1, but in a standard or a half point, I think he's going to be unbelievable, because, this is what he always has been, and it's been consistent.
I think the only number to really look at with Tyreek's stats is he had 87 receptions this year. And I'm just looking at my list of my top 25 guys, and there's 10 guys on that list who had more receptions than him.
Yeah.
So that's a number to look at. But with that said, he still had 1,200, over almost 1,300 yards, 85 yards a game. So he makes the most of those receptions, which normally they're long, deep balls that are like 50, 60-yard bombs from Pat. So I'm not overly worried about that number. But like I've already said, he plays in the best offense in the NFL. They're going to score a crap ton of points, and Tyreek is going to be on the receiving end of a lot of those.
And they're always right up near the top of the league in pass attempts as well. So he isn't necessarily a top target, but it's going to be an offense that throws the ball a lot. So he doesn't have to be to still get really good volume.
Moving on to number 3, we have Stefon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills. And last year was Stefon Diggs' first year as a true number 1 wide receiver after he got out of Minnesota. And he showed that he can kind of handle the workload he was getting. He had 127 receptions on 166 targets with over 1,500 yards, which is all first in the NFL last year in fantasy football. So he was the number 1 wide receiver to pretty much have last year. Considering where people drafted Stefon Diggs, they got an absolute steal from him. People didn't think he was going to be that good, and now with Josh Allen being secured with his new contract, they know Josh Allen's going to be throwing in the ball. I don't know if it's going to be the same kind of fantasy output. We do have him ranked at 3, but I do see a scenario where he could fall out of maybe the top 5, maybe lower end top 10, just because now teams are expecting what they're going to get. They know it's a very throw-heavy offense, so they might double and triple team him like they've done to Devonta Adams before, so then you might not see those open looks or easy catches for Stefon Diggs this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we said when we talked about Josh Allen applies to Stefon Diggs. Like last year was kind of the perfect storm for that offense. Like they were clicking on an unbelievable level. They had a bad defense and they were competitive in a lot of games. So they just kept throwing the ball. But I think this year, it'll be a better team. Like that Bills team, I think the defense will actually be a lot better this year, which will benefit the overall group. But I don't know if you'll see the same numbers put up by these guys. I mean, saying that he's still my number 3 wide receiver, I'd love to have him, but I don't know if that's why he's number 3, unlike the other 2, because we've seen them do it year over year. We know what Devonta Adams, Tyreek Hill are going to do. Diggs has done it once. I want to see him do it again. I think he can, but I want to see it first.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the thing about Diggs is the only thing that's really, really positive about Diggs is he is the only guy on the team. Yeah. There's nobody else in the team is in the same situation as Devonta Adams. It's probably Cole Beasley or John Brown taking targets away from him, which, to be honest, if Josh Allen's in a pinch, he's throwing it to Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, I don't even think John Brown's there anymore. I think their number 3 would be Gabriel Davis.
Oh, yeah, you're right. My apologies.
I like Gabriel Davis, but he's not going to take a significant target share either.
No, absolutely not. Now, I totally agree that I don't know if he's going to put up those same type of numbers, but he's totally the number 3, to have no question about it. You're probably drafting him maybe end of the 1st, definitely early 2nd.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I definitely don't think you're going to take him over at Tyreek or Devonta.
Yeah, I mean, he only had 8 touchdowns last year, which is a good number, but I don't think that's, screaming regression. And even if he loses 200-300 yards, you still have a great wide receiver there. So, again, I think with all this, we're not saying he's definitely going to finish there, but it's who has the odds of finishing high, and a guy with that kind of volume in a good offense, I think he's primed to be up there.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to number 4, it is DeAndre Hopkins from the Arizona Cardinals. And as last year with Stefon Diggs, this was Hopkins' first year as an Arizona Cardinal, and you know what? It didn't show any, fallback from when he was on the Texans. He was still getting a lot of targets from Kyler Murray, even though a lot of people weren't sure how that was going to look. And the Cardinals are one of the most exciting offenses up and coming in the NFL. They have an unbelievable quarterback, have a top-tier wide receiver now, and Hopkins, he had a really good start to the year. He never really faltered, and he was still an unbelievable option at the wide receiver position, which he's been like that for almost his entire career. Yeah. Now, the only thing I'm really worried about with Nuke Hopkins is the division he plays in, because having to play against the LA Rams and Jalen Ramsey twice a year, that's always been a little bit of a problem for Nuke Hopkins. Plus, he's going to have to go against the 49ers defense, and he has no real competition other than maybe Christian Kirk or Andy Isabella and now they got AJ Green and Larry Fitz is technically still there. Not sure if he's going to retire.
I don't think he's actually under contract yet, so I would lean towards he's not going to be there. Maybe he's just sitting out training camp, just the vet move, do that, and then sign last second, but I would bet on, or I guess not bet, but I would guess he's probably not going to be there.
Yeah, so I still think that DeAndre Hopkins is not going to have anything to worry about in that situation, but Kyler Murray is a lot more of a run-first quarterback if he has to be, but DeAndre Hopkins is no knock on him. He's top 5 wide receiver you're taking in your draft. He was sliding so far last year that people thought he was going to regress. And he just showed in Arizona, there's no sign of regression. There's no worries about a new offensive scheme or anything. Hopkins is still an unbelievable player.
Yeah, I think going into last year, like I had these questions of, is he as good as he looked, or is Deshaun Watson just that good? And I think he proved that he's a monster. He's one of the most physical wide receivers out there. He's an old-fashioned. He's going to mug you. He's going to go up and take the ball. But he had 160 targets last year. Like, that's second behind Stephon Diggs. Like, that's what you're getting with him. It's just volume, 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 and he's going to catch most of what goes to him. He might not break as many big plays as some other guys, but he's a sure thing every week. Like, you're getting 8, 10, 12 targets every week.
Exactly. Now moving on to number 5, one of my favorite players in the NFL because he plays for my Atlanta Falcons. We have Calvin Ridley at number 5. And this one I'm really curious about because Calvin Ridley finished as a very good option. It was the same as Stephon Diggs, where you drafted Calvin Ridley last year, you got him at a steal, and he outperformed his ADP.
Yeah.
But now we have him ranked at number 5, where you're going to probably have to draft him in order to get him. He's going to be top 5, top 7 in order to get Calvin Ridley. The only question mark I have with Calvin Ridley is Matt Ryan is regressing, and Julio is gone, so Calvin Ridley is now the number 1 guy. And they have Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst as the only other real pass catchers, maybe other than maybe Russell Gage in that offense. So I don't know how Calvin Ridley handles a wide receiver 1 workload. I totally have faith he can do it. He's been a wide receiver 1 in my opinion for a while, but I don't know how he's going to be able to handle week in, week out. Teams are fully planning to have their best corners on him, to have their defense just surrounded to him. So I think he's going to be fine. That offense is going to be on the field all the time because our defense stinks.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to throw the ball all day anyway. So Calvin Ridley is going to be on the benefit end of that spectrum. So I totally believe he's going to have an unbelievable season again.
Yeah, I think the big question is, can he be to Matt Ryan what Julio Jones was? Because like that was kind of one of those like talking points in fantasy for a while was, if Julio Jones is out, it doesn't really upgrade any of their other options, because generally the defense or the offense just kind of falls apart without him. Mm-hmm. So if he's not there, does that downgrade the whole offense, or does Calvin Ridley just step up into his role and actually kind of provide for the team what he did for a long time? So I think that's going to be what you watch. I also think like the new, I guess, head coach, Arthur Smith, he's going to be running the offense. He did really well in Tennessee. So I think that's a positive. Like the offense that's been running Atlanta for a while now has been pretty bland. It's not been super impressive. So I think that can only help.
Yeah, as a Falcon fan, I truly hope Calvin Ridley has a good season. And I think when you draft Calvin Ridley, there is a tiny bit of risk because we have not seen him do this year in and year out. Last year was kind of his first real year of unbelievable production. Yeah. So this is the real, like, you know what, what's he going to be as a number one option? But
yeah, I feel very confident in the volume. I'm less confident in how that looks in that offense. Because, again, we haven't seen it yet. So I love the player. I think he's going to be great, but there's just that little bit of hesitation.
Yep. Moving on to number 6, we have Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings. Logan is a little bit different than I am on Justin Jefferson. He had Justin Jefferson ranked at number 4. I have Jefferson ranked at number 8. And for my reasoning, Justin Jefferson is an unbelievable option. He's great. The only worry I have about him is there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense with Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. I understand he had a really good year last year. The only worry I have is technically he's a second-year guy. A lot of teams weren't expecting what they were going to get from Justin Jefferson last year, so maybe defenses are going to more focalize on him as the number one receiver other than Adam Thielen. Yeah. So I have complete faith he's going to be great, but it's another one of those risky, like high-end guys you're going to take where he could possibly fall flat on his face. And the only reason I say that is he's going to have unbelievable games, I guarantee it. But Adam Thielen had unbelievable games last year where Jefferson did absolutely nothing. So is that going to happen more this year, or is it going to be a consistent Justin Jefferson show?
Yeah, I'm all in on Justin Jefferson. I think we've seen pretty consistently the great wide receivers take a leap year two. Like A.J. Brown, his rookie year, he was good. Last year, he turned into a monster. DK Metcalf, his rookie year, he was good. Last year, he turned into a monster. Even DJ Moore, his rookie year, he was decent. His second year, he was over 1,000 yards. Like, we've seen consistently with these guys who are legit number one wide receivers, they take a year two leap. Now, what does that mean for Justin Jefferson? I think it means kind of more of the same. Like, what he did last year, it would be tough to top that, but I think he's just an insanely good wide receiver. I think that offense is going to run how it's run this for years. Like, they always had Thielen and Diggs, and they were both just great fantasy options. I think Thielen is starting to slip a little bit. Like, he's into his 30s, so I think there's going to be more heavily leaning on Justin Jefferson, and he can do it. I think he proved last year he's a special kind of player.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like I said earlier, I'm only worried about is whose game is it going to be. Is it going to be a Jefferson game, or is it going to be a Thielen game? Because they have that all the time in Tampa Bay with Mike Evans and Godwin. Is it a Mike Evans game? Is it a Godwin game? And that's kind of, I feel like you're going to have to worry about that this year. All depends on how Adam Thielen looks. If he's starting to look like an old man regressing, you can probably see Justin Jefferson getting easily over 100 receptions, probably over 130 targets again.
Well, I think the other crazy thing about Justin Jefferson last year is he didn't start the first two games of the season. Like, he was technically, like, he played 69% of snaps week one. Nice. And then 54% week two. Like, if I remember right, you drafted him, and then you dropped him after week two. Because it didn't look like he had much of a role in that offense. Like,
are you talking about me personally?
I think so. I know someone in our league did.
I think it was one of our other buddies' drafts. I think you were telling me about the other night. I remember honestly looking at Justin Jefferson on the waiver wire, and I said, I'm going to pick this guy up.
Yeah.
And then never did because I had Adam Thielen at that point. But still, it's like, I get where you're coming from.
After week two, there was I think a lot of people dropped him because he wasn't that involved. Like, he had 3 targets, 26 yards, 44 yards, weeks 1 and 2. And then all of a sudden it was like the Vikings saw, I think, like, again, short training camp last year, didn't have the preseason. He missed out on all that. And all of a sudden the Vikings were like, oh crap, this guy's unbelievable. He needs to be on the field. So he had, like, what was his total yardage last year? 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like, he caught 88 balls on 125 targets. And he did that in essentially 14 games. Like, he was not a key part of the game plans week 1 and 2. Like, I think if you want to talk about a little bit of room to grow, I think that's it right there. Actual fully part of the offense for 16 or I guess 17 games technically this year. So again, I am probably higher than I should be on Justin Jefferson, but I think he's an unbelievable wide receiver who's just going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to number 7, we have DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks. And like you said already, DK Metcalf had an unbelievable jump from year 1 to year 2 and proved that he is an absolute monster for fantasy. And the only reason I'm a little concerned with DK Metcalf is he's an unbelievable fantasy option. He's super fast, as we've seen him chase down Buda Baker, which is now a massive meme.
Yeah.
But the only thing you got to worry about is how run heavy that Seahawks team is going to be, and how long is essentially Pete Carroll going to let Russell Wilson cook. Because if he lets him cook and start slinging the football everywhere across the field, DK Metcalf is going to be an unbelievable option. Probably be top 5, top 3 in my opinion if that's what happens. But if he doesn't, then he's probably going to be more of the same as what it was at the end of last season, where he has hit or miss games. He has games where he's unbelievable, and then he has games against the LA Rams where he scores like 4 fantasy points, and you're like, what the heck? That just cost me my season.
Yeah.
And I still think that DK Metcalf, he has to worry about Tyler Lockett in that offense, who takes a little bit of his target share away. But when you're looking at deep balls, you're going to assume it's most likely DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, which you would assume is most likely going to get some of the other balls. But DK Metcalf is a physical monster, as the same as what Megatron was, because that's a lot of his comparison, and also like Julio Jones. So as long as the Seahawks don't run the ball all day long, then DK Metcalf is an unbelievable option, which we still have him at 7. He's still a guy you're paying up for. He's in a really good offense with one of the best quarterbacks in the league, so I totally like having DK Metcalf as a second-round wide receiver.
Yeah, I think the passing volume is going to go up in that offense. Like, their new OC came from Sean McVay and the Rams, so that's not a crazy pass-heavy offense, but it's generally kind of middle-of-the-league kind of passing offense, which, if you can get that in Seattle, I think it's going to be great, because, again, what Russell Wilson does so well is the deep ball. So with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, if they're throwing a lot and that deep ball's hitting, I think it's going to be very successful.
Moving on to number 8, we have Keenan Allen from the Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen has always been a very consistent, probably underrated wide receiver. Even last season, Keenan Allen, you would probably pick him up in the 3rd round, 4th round last year. You're probably going to get him maybe at the end of the 2nd, probably early 3rd again. His ranking is probably where it's been the last couple of years, but I think his upside is a lot higher than it was last year, at least when you look at it from the outside. Is last year we weren't sure if it was going to be Tyrod Taylor playing. That's what we assumed, and we weren't sure how Justin Herbert was going to look. Now we have a whole season of what Justin Herbert looks like, and he looks really friggin' good.
Yeah.
And now that they've added an O-line help in Rashad Slater, and Keenan Allen was absolutely balling last year when he had Justin Herbert playing. He was averaging almost about 15 to 20 fantasy points on about 13 to 15 receptions a game, or targets a game anyways. That he was the focal point of that offense when Herbert stepped in. That only helped him. He was Herbert's favorite option. I don't know how much it's going to hurt him with a full season of Eckler if he stays healthy, or Mike Williams, how much it's going to affect Herbert, like passing the ball to Keenan Allen. I still think he's going to be a PPR machine where he's just going to get a lot of catches and maybe not get a whole lot of yardage, which he's not really known for, but he's going to get a lot of those red zone looks, and he's going to get a lot of targets, which is what you're looking for in a top-end wide receiver.
Yeah, my only worry with him is I think that was another team that, for the offense, almost everything went right. Like, they had some injuries, but in terms of Keenan Allen, they were behind. They were coming back in a lot of games. Very high volume, and he was like kind of like low in the 10, or I guess like around 10 in points per game. I don't have the exact number in front of me here, but
he was 13.93 fantasy points.
Yeah, which put him, like, that's behind A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, like most of the guys we've talked about, like basically everyone we've talked about already. So I think the upside is there. Like, I think he's a very safe option. But I think this is a guy we kind of have different opinions on. I'm not as high because I think he comes down a little bit from what he did last year.
Yeah, I think that's totally possible, but I think, to be honest, I would lean more towards him having a better season. I think second year of Justin Herbert, it's going to be a lot more of an efficient offense. They're going to be in a lot more games where they don't have to worry about throwing it all the time, so you don't have to worry about Keenan Allen being doubled or whatnot. And if Eckler's healthy, that's only going to help them because the run game was a lot of their problem last year, where they knew they had to throw the football all the time, and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were the beneficiaries of that. Keenan Allen will be easily a top 10 wide receiver, in my opinion, for the whole season if he stays healthy. That's another reason you have to look for Keenan Allen is the end of the year, I had him, I loved him, but in my championship rounds, he was injured, didn't play, and he let me down near the end of the year, which was kind of sad, but that's where you got to worry about with a guy like him.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on to number 9, we have A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans. Logan has already spoke very highly of A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown is unbelievable. I have nothing bad to say about him. The only thing I will say that could hurt his fantasy output from years past is the addition of Julio Jones. I don't know what A.J. Brown looks like in that offense. It could hurt him because Julio might get a lot of targets, but it might help him because Julio's going to get a lot of those coverages where A.J. Brown's going to be left one-on-one or he's going to be left in a soft zone, and he's going to be able to burn the defense for massive touchdowns, which he's done in the past. It all comes down to Ryan Tannehill and if he's going to be able to do it, which he's shown he has already been able to do it.
Yeah.
But A.J. Brown's a top 10 wide receiver this year. I got no doubt in my mind that if everything works out, he's going to be there.
Oh, yeah. Like, he's kind of like Tyreek Hill light. Like, he is big plays waiting to happen. Like, the volume's not there. Like, looking at it, he had one game with 10 or more targets last year. Like, he's not going to be the target volume kind of guy. So if you're searching for volume, he's probably not your guy as your wide receiver 1. But that's an offense that's been incredibly efficient. The more research I've done, everything I've seen is that their defense projects to be pretty bad this year, which I didn't realize. Like when we were talking about Derrick Henry, I was like, oh, I think they got a good defense. But yeah, everything I've looked at since then, I've got more into kind of the overall picture of the NFL. It's not looking great for their defense, so I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more than they did in the past. And if they do, that's extra volume for A.J. Brown. Like, a lot of targets are out of there. Corey Davis got a lot of targets last year. Jonnu Smith ate up a lot of targets. Those guys are gone. They replaced him with Julio Jones, who's awesome, but that's one dude. So I think there is going to be some targets to be gained. Adam Humphries was there as well. He's gone. So again, like they lost a lot of targets and they replaced him with one guy, which means A.J. Brown's going to have to step up and take some more targets too. So I think he's a guy. Health has always been a minor concern with him. He misses some games here and there, but when he's healthy, he's been awesome.
Absolutely. And moving on to round out our top 10, we have Allen Robinson II from the Chicago Bears. Now, I'm a proud owner in our Keeper League with Allen Robinson. And by the way, if you didn't know, I also have Keenan Allen and Devonta Adams, so I'm rolling in the wide receiver department. That's beside the point. But Allen Robinson plays on probably one of the sketchiest teams in the NFL with Chicago Bears quarterback-wise, because we don't know who's going to start week 1. The coaching staff still isn't committed to a starter yet. We don't know if it's going to be Nick Foles, if it's going to be Andy Dalton. It's highly unlikely it's going to be Justin Fields, though I assume by week 6 or so he should be starting.
I'm starting to think he might start the season. Like I saw his quotes from, I think it was Matt Nagy today. I don't remember the exact quotes, but it was essentially they want him playing a ton in the preseason. Like they plan to, I think it was Dalton for one series and then Fields in past halftime. So like if they're taking that long of a look at him, he's starting to get those kind of first team reps in practice a little bit. They need to win. Matt Nagy needs to win, and if he's taking this long of a look at Fields, I don't think Dalton's good enough to hold him back. So again, not guaranteed. I would not bet anything on it at this point. I would not even change rankings, but I'm starting to get that same feeling we're getting with Trey Lance right now, where it's like he's sneaking in. And I think those guys are just so much more talented than the guys they're behind. So if they get a look, and if Fields is the starter, Robinson would probably be a couple spots higher for me.
And to be honest, that's what you're hoping for. Because if Fields is there, Allen Robinson will dominate. Because the only thing Allen Robinson has not had in his career is an actual quarterback.
No.
And if he has an actual quarterback, we have yet to see what Allen Robinson can do with a legitimate quarterback. I wouldn't even want to know what he'd be able to do with like a Matt Stafford or with an Aaron Rodgers or a type like that. Because I feel like he would be in the top 5 because I think he's that talented.
Yeah.
But that is your best case scenario, because if he has Andy Dalton or Nick Foles, he's still a top 15 wide receiver easily.
Yeah.
But if he has Justin Fields, who as rookies tend to do, they will feed the big names, because look at Justin Herbert last year. He fed 15 targets to Keenan Allen because that's his go-to guy.
Yeah.
Allen Robinson is the go-to guy. The only guy maybe that could take some targets away is probably Darnell Mooney, who I'm actually pretty high on this year too.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to have a good year, but Allen Robinson is still the guy in third down they're going to go to in the red zone. They actually don't look at Allen Robinson a lot in the red zone for some reason in Chicago. I don't know if that's going to change under Justin Fields' offense, but that's a wait and see. But other than that, Allen Robinson is an unbelievable option you'd be happy to have. And he's not necessarily one of the biggest names you look at when you look at wide receivers, but he's always a consistent wide receiver 1 that you look at.
No, and like the one thing you like about Allen Robinson is even if Fields comes in and he sucks, he's made his money off of Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. Like has he played with other quarterbacks? I don't know. Like I think that might be those are the main guys he's played with, and he's been awesome, and he's been great for fantasy. So if he can do it with those guys, I have a hard time believing Justin Fields is a big step below that. So he's very safe.
That's the truth. All right, and that's going to round out part 1 of our wide receiver rankings. Thank you for listening, and we really appreciate if you would like and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our content that we normally will be posting every Tuesday and Friday at 9 a.m. And again, if you want to check out part 2 of our rankings, it will be on Friday, where you will find out where we have wide receivers number 11 through 20. As always, thank you for listening. As always, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And we hope to see you in the next video. Thanks.